In the flickering candlelight, the Ouija board lay before us, a portal to the unknown. As my friends and I gathered around it, a shiver of anticipation ran down my spine. Emily, the most daring of us, placed her fingertips on the planchette, her eyes wide with excitement. The board seemed to come alive beneath our touch, the pointer gliding effortlessly across the letters. "Hello," Emily whispered. A moment passed before a faint response echoed through the room. Yes, a wave of exhilaration washed over us. We had made contact. As we asked questions, the pointer danced across the board, revealing secrets and answering our deepest fears. But with each question, a sense of unease crept into the air. "Is there anyone else here?" I asked. "Yes," the pointer replied. "Many." My heart pounded in my chest as the realization dawned upon me that we were not alone. There were other spirits present, watching us, listening. "Who are you?" Emily asked. The pointer paused, then began to spell out a name. "Eliza." A cold shiver ran down my back as I recognized the name. It was the name of a girl who had died in this very house years ago. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Help," the pointer whispered. We were stunned. "A ghost? Asking for our help? How can we help you?" Emily asked cautiously. "Find my body," the pointer replied. We were torn. Did we dare venture into the darkness of the house to search for a long-lost corpse? But how could we refuse a ghost in need? With trembling hands, we made our way through the silent, dusty rooms. The air was heavy with the scent of decay and the sound of our own heartbeats. As we entered the attic, a musty odor filled our nostrils. A single window cast a dim glow, illuminating a wooden chest in the corner. Emily approached the chest, her hand shaking. She lifted the lid, revealing a skeleton clothed in a tattered dress. "Eliza," Emily whispered. The pointer on the Ouija board twitched violently. Yes, we had found her. With heavy hearts, we carried Eliza's remains to the cemetery and gave her the proper burial she deserved. As we lowered her coffin into the ground, a sense of peace washed over the group. We had not only helped a ghost find its final resting place, but also exorcised the house of its haunting presence. As we left the cemetery, the Ouija board was still there, lying on the ground. We picked it up and burned it, scattering its ashes to the wind. From that day forward, the house was silent. The spirits had moved on, and we were left with only the memory of our terrifying experience. But even now, years later, I can still feel a shiver of unease whenever I think of the Ouija board, a reminder of the darkness that lurks just beyond our reach. In the eerie confines of my childhood attic, where shadows danced and whispered secrets, a forbidden artifact lay dormant, a Ouija board. Intrigued and reckless, my friends and I gathered around its mystical surface, eager to connect with the unknown. As our fingers trembled upon the planchette, a palpable silence descended upon the room. With bated breath, we uttered the age-old incantation. "Spirits, are you there?" A cold shiver ran down my spine as the planchette moved erratically across the board, spelling out a single, chilling word: "Yes." Euphoria quickly turned to trepidation as we realized our reckless disregard for the paranormal. The planchette spun with increasing speed, its movement becoming more erratic and unpredictable. It seemed as if an unseen force was guiding it, mocking our curiosity. Questions poured forth from our lips, desperate to quench our morbid thirst for knowledge. The planchette danced across the board, revealing fragments of a tragic tale, a young woman who had met an untimely demise within those very walls. As the night wore on, the temperature plummeted, and a sense of oppression filled the room. The planchette began to spell out a name: Sarah. Fear gnawed at our hearts as we realized the connection between the spirit and the attic's haunting history. Suddenly, the planchette shot towards the edge of the board and slammed into the wall, sending shards of wood flying. A piercing scream echoed through the attic, emanating from Sarah's spirit. Panic surged through us as we witnessed the true horror that we had unleashed. With trembling hands, we attempted to end the communication, but the planchette refused to move. It remained frozen at the edge of the board, as if taunting us with its sinister presence. As the first rays of dawn pierced through the attic window, we stumbled downstairs, our bodies weary and our minds forever scarred. We never touched the Ouija board again, but the memory of that fateful night lingered in our nightmares for years to come. Years passed, and I had long forgotten the horrors I had witnessed in my childhood. However, one fateful evening, as I lay in my bed, the sound of a planchette moving across a board sent shivers down my spine. Fear paralyzed me as I realized the board had somehow found its way into my home. Desperation surged through me as I leaped from my bed and raced towards my son's room, where I had last seen it. As I burst through the door, my heart sank. There, in the flickering light of the bedside lamp, my son and his friends were huddled around the Ouija board. Time seemed to stand still as I watched in horror as the planchette moved erratically across the board, spelling out a single word, "Remember." A cold, icy grip tightened around my chest as I realized the full extent of my folly. The spirit from the attic had followed me, and it was now targeting my son. With all my might, I lunged for the board, but it was too late. The planchette spun faster and faster, spelling out the name Sarah over and over again. My son's eyes widened in terror as the room filled with an oppressive darkness. A deafening scream tore from his throat as the darkness enveloped him, consuming his light forever. As the darkness retreated, leaving only a void where my son had once stood, I collapsed to the floor, racked with guilt and despair. The Ouija board had taken its revenge, and I had condemned my own child to a fate worse than death. Haunted by the horrors of the past and present, I am left to live out my days in solitude, forever tormented by the memory of my reckless actions. The Ouija board, a cursed artifact, has forever tainted my life, leaving me a broken and shattered shell of a man. In the quiet solitude of my dimly lit study, I found myself drawn to the unassuming wooden box that lay upon my desk. It was a Ouija board, a relic of a bygone era, its planchette silently hovering over the alphabet and numbers etched upon its surface. I had always been fascinated by the occult, but a sense of unease had always lingered in the back of my mind. As I placed my fingertips on the planchette, a surge of anticipation and trepidation coursed through my veins. I asked a simple question: "Is anyone there?" The silence was deafening, and I felt a flicker of disappointment. But then, the planchette began to move with an eerie deliberation. It traced its way across the board, spelling out a single word: "Yes." A chill ran down my spine as I realized that the board was responding. I posed further questions, and the planchette continued to move, revealing a disembodied voice that claimed to be the spirit of a young woman named Amelia. She had been murdered in the very room where I now sat, her body never found. Curiosity quickly turned to obsession as I spent countless nights communicating with Amelia. She told me of her tragic fate and the desperate search for her remains. I became engrossed in her story, feeling a strange sense of connection to her lost soul. However, as days turned into weeks, the sessions began to take a sinister turn. The planchette's movements grew erratic, and the messages became increasingly cryptic. Amelia's voice seemed to be fading, replaced by a menacing presence that whispered threats and insults. One particularly unsettling night, the planchette refused to answer my questions and instead began to violently shake. As I tried to pull my fingers away, it clung to my skin like a leech. A sharp pain shot through my hand, and I watched in horror as the planchette began to carve symbols into my palm. Fear consumed me as I realized that I had unleashed something far more sinister than I had ever imagined. The entity that possessed the Ouija board was no longer Amelia, but a malevolent spirit that had been drawn to my curiosity. Desperate to escape its grasp, I tried to break the connection by flipping the board upside down, but it was no use. The symbols carved into my hand burned with an unholy intensity, becoming a beacon for the entity. As the night wore on, the spirit's presence grew stronger. The study filled with an oppressive darkness, and the walls seemed to close in on me. I could hear faint whispers that echoed through the room, urging me to harm myself. With every ounce of willpower, I fought against the entity's influence. I knew that if I gave in, I would be lost forever. As dawn approached, the spirit's grip on me weakened. The planchette fell from my hand, clattering to the floor. Exhausted and terrified, I stumbled to my feet and fled from the study. I never went back. The Ouija board remained in that room, a constant reminder of the horrors I had experienced. To this day, I carry the scars of that night both physically and emotionally. The symbols carved into my hand serve as a warning of the dangers that lie in the realm of the unknown. And the memory of Amelia's voice haunts me still, a tragic tale of a soul forever lost to the darkness.